Good morning. This is Brian from the Daily Dad podcast. We have our first guest today. Very excited. I'm going to go ahead and introduce uh, kind of co-host is Van, and then our special guest today is Marcello. So, Marcello, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then Van can kind of jump into the first couple questions.
Yeah. I mean, thank you guys for having me. My name is Marcello Sharif, 34-year-old father of two, one on the way, beautiful wife. I'm a special agent for the Department of Homeland Security. I've been doing that for this goes on 13 years next month. Um, and I'm also a real estate investor.
Awesome, awesome.
Cool. So, Marcelo, our podcast is, as you heard, it's the Daily Dad. So, w- basically, what our podcast is about, we're trying to put information out there for dads and the greater kind of families and things like that, for this to be a source of information for them to help in whatever way they can. So, for you, what does it mean for you to be a dad?
I mean, it means everything to me to be a dad. You know, I grew up, with a dad. I know a lot of people have gone through life without having one. My father was one who did not have the benefit of growing up with his father really in his life. Um, and the road for him was a lot harder, just to learn and try to figure out what it takes to be a dad. Um, Luckily, I was able to have a great role model for myself that kind of was able to lay a foundation that I can continue for my kids. So I mean, just being a dad is the most important thing uh, that I might have been put on this world to do.
It's awesome. So I know, like you and I have known each other for a while. We actually met through the real estate. I would call how we met a shenanigan. Um, But when you kind of look at
Destiny.
it, yeah, what do you think is the hardest kind of part to balance? Because you have two, and they got one on the way, and then obviously like you're good at your 9 to 5. You're trying to be an investor. You're got a wife. You're trying to be a good husband, which I think sometimes it's harder to be a good husband than it is to be a good dad because
Hmm.
you can't always be right when you're a husband. It's kind of like, what are the big challenges that you run into and some of the solutions that you like to institute? Like, if you were to give a new dad, yeah, we'll go this way. A new dad like comes to you like, "Hey, Marcelo, I'm super excited. I'm gonna have my first kid." What is the piece of advice you would give to a new dad out the gate?
I think the newest advice would just be to be there. Um, I think a lot of times we have children, families, and we tend to think that being a good husband or being a good father is providing, and that's true. Yeah, you got to be able to provide, but I don't think a lot of us understand that providing isn't just monetary value or material. A lot of times, providing the most important part of providing is family time. Being there. Uh, my dad was an amazing dad, but as a kid growing up, I didn't understand that he was working all the time. He was providing all the time. And, I found myself at times upset with him that, well, why isn't he at my basketball games? Why isn't he, you know, able to do this with me or do that with me? Not understanding that he was providing in the best way that he could and had the ability to at that time, and with the understanding that he knew what providing was at that time. Um, and I just think that having time is more important than anything. uh, the other day I asked my kids, you know 2 years ago, what did we do for your birthday? And they were like, oh, we went to the Great Wolf Lodge, we went ice skating. They both remembered the time that we spent together. I asked them what gifts they got for their birthday. Had no clue. They couldn't remember those things. They don't remember the monetary things, but they remember you spending time with them. I think that's the most important thing you can do.
I agree. So like I kind of have three tenets, and I think you and I kind of talked about this before. And like my first one is showing up. Like in order to be, in my opinion, a good partner, good dad, and I kind of expanded it past being a good dad into my other relationships. Is just always showing up and being there. I think that is incredibly important. I've had the same thing for my kids. I have this right and like we've known each other for a while, but like my oldest right now, I drive him and his friends to wrestling practice, and it's for me it's a 90-minute drive. Oh, no, it's about 2 hours worth of driving. So I got to drive from Madison to this little town in Reedsburg, which is about an hour and 15 minutes, and then I got to drive them back to Madison for practice, and then I got to drive them back to Baraboo, and then I got to drive home. So I mean, for me, it's probably about 3.5, 4 hours in the car, and just
Mhm.
being engaged with the kids. It was interesting because some of them were like, "Hey, like my son told me, like, Dad, like my friends, think that you're one of the fun dads, and it's not that I don't let them, cuss or get away with anything, but I actively talk to them. I'm actively engaged, and when I show up, like I'm like, hey, how's your day? Like, how'd that math test go? Like, I try to be involved and be present. And I do give them a hard time because, as part of my personality is like, it's a little rough around the edges. Van knows this too. So I'll hassle them like, oh, you got a C on that test. Oh, and then my son will be like, oh, it must be one of the dumb kids. Um, like, yeah, that's how he is. So I think that being actively engaged is an amazing piece of advice. And I think a lot of times social media and all these other platforms that are like talking about what it is to be manly are, oh, you got to make that money and you can do what you want. And, like it's so different when you actually become a real human and realize that, hey,
Yeah,
like showing up is for your kids is important. Um, they don't care if you have $1 million. They don't care if you have $10 million. If you don't show up to donuts for dads and they're the only kid without a dad there, they definitely feel that.
yep,
So
Yeah,
definitely.
I definitely agree. I think the responses you're saying are they're awesome, and they align right with some of our episodes that we've had. So a question I have for you, Marcelo, would be you talked a lot about those other responsibilities you have and the type of dad that you are and you want to be. How do you balance those other responsibilities, like a 9 to 5, or maybe if it's not even a 9 to 5, maybe it's like a 60-hour job or however long it is, and also that kind of that side hustle that you're doing, or maybe it's even bigger than that with your real estate gig.
I mean, I think it's a matter of actively making the conscious effort to do it, to make sure you're making that time. I mean, working for the Department of Homeland Security, I'm busy quite often. I mean, just I'm on vacation right now, vacation. But yesterday, I'm sitting in the back of this real estate conference, and I'm literally having to ask the media people and stuff like, "Hey, can I sit back here in the corner? I have to work." And I'm like in the back trying to listen to these great speakers and stuff, and I'm sitting typing a report because I got a big operation that I'm doing on Monday that just popped up out of nowhere. So so you're always busy, um but you have to just make the time. You have to make the conscious effort to do it. You know Making sure that you get home from your long days of work and you want to just kind of relax. You want to just sit down and be like, don't don't bother me right now. Just let me. But and that's fine. Decompress, but also just make sure that you're taking that time to actually spend time with your family, your children. I mean, that goes for your spouse as well. Um, and also, sometimes you'll get distracted with that stuff where you're like, okay, I'm working. I got home. All right, I got to do my real estate stuff. I got stuff going on with that. Um, and your spouse or somebody might let you know, like, hey, you know, you're working a lot, whatever it is, not taking that criticism too personal or getting upset with them, because I mean you're also trying to build for your family and their future, and they'll understand that and support it. But just always make sure they can kind of wheel you back in and make sure that you're being active in their lives. And just, if it's a priority, it's a priority. You'll make it a priority. I'm sure you can make it. We make it a priority to do other things. Make it a priority to play video games. We make it a priority to watch TV. You can insert your family in that as well.
So I actually was thinking about this because your job uh, is terrifying and it makes you travel all the time. So like there are times when you can't physically be there. I know there are a couple times we've talked and you're either, in Texas or California or Florida because your job takes you everywhere. How do you show up and like, be there for your kids when you can't physically be there? Because I know that we have some dads that travel a lot too. How do you make sure that you're actively being engaged with them when you can't be there, like in person?
I mean, of course, it's a lot harder. Like, yeah, I just came back from California. I was sent to California for a month, doing operations and stuff, and uh, it's just a matter of prioritizing it. So I can't, see them in the morning going to school, or physically see them when they get home from school, or see them right before they go to bed. But we set a time every day, every single day. I get on a Zoom call with them, or face call, or whatever, and make sure that I see their faces, and that I talk to them every single day. Uh, Whether it's an hour, or sometimes it's only 5 or 10 minutes, but just knowing that, hey, dad's calling. When is dad calling? They get excited for those things. So, I've had times when I've had to miss calls before, and they let me know. Oh, you didn't call. You didn't have time for us. Why didn't you call? Why didn't you call? We were waiting for your call. And I missed that like one time, and I never missed it again after that. Like I will always find time, even if I need to let them stay up a little later, just so to make sure they get time with me. So, just actively finding time. There's time. Everybody has time. Uh, and one thing that I learned yesterday, in our real estate business, was people say that they're busy, but are you being productive? And a lot of
Yes.
times you're busy, but you're really not doing anything. And you can take that time to do something productive. And what's more productive than family time?
Yeah. I sometimes find myself busy, but not exactly
Mhm.
productive. Uh, so I struggle with that myself. So
Yep.
that's an excellent call out, and I definitely appreciate the, you know, building when you can't be there, building that relationship and building excitement. I think is incredibly important, and because as you all know, so I know two of mine I don't get all the time, and Vance still got real young kids, so he's still in that the little in training. How old are yours? So why don't we share how old yours are, and then you got a nugget on the way, so you're going from where you are back to that baby stage, and
Yeah, yeah. So my daughter is she's 9, and my son will be 8 in like 3 weeks. Uh, and then of course we have another daughter on the way in September. Um, so Van, I
congratulations.
might be hitting. Thank you, thank you. I might be hitting you up, Van, because my swaddle game is off now. It's been about 8 years since I've had to deal with a newborn, so I got to rewatch all of my YouTube videos and get everything back together,
I
rebuying
gotcha.
everything.
Yeah. The When you're in the hospital, definitely help those nurses. Those nurses are experts. I mean, they do it so
Yes.
quick, and you think that it's too tight, but it's the perfect, it's the perfect tightness.
I need them
I
tight. My son was terrible when
the
with his swaddle game. He was like he was like the Incredible Hulk. He could like break out of anything. So I had to like really figure it out for him. And so I just gotta find that video that I watched, because that was master of swaddling right
There's a couple of things I wanted to touch on that you were saying. Both of you touched on the busy but not productive, and I completely agree. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think I've learned in the past few years. I think it's probably been during COVID, and that's when we've been home the most. But I really realized that everyone has 24 hours in a day, and anybody can use it however they want, right? And they can say that they're busy, but really it's what you prioritize that you're gonna do. So if you prioritize doing something else over being with your family, that's really just you choosing to do that. So if you prioritize it and do it, I think that really whenever anybody says they're busy, it's just that they're choosing to do something else. And I think that's something it's really hard to learn. Because also I really relate to your other comment about your father because my father kind of did the same thing where he prioritized going to work, getting that paycheck for the family over time spent with the family, right? So that's something that it's got to be a fine line. You definitely have to provide for your family, but at the end of the day, they're really gonna remember those times when you spent with them, right? That time that you
Right.
put out there and that you were there for holidays, you were there for basketball games, you were there for soccer games, for wrestling events and things like that. There's one other thing that I remembered as well, uh, that I heard from Kobe Bryant. Don't know if you're a fan of him or not, but
My guy.
he he's known for doing those 4 a.m. workouts and a tireless worker and everything like that. I believe he had 4 girls. So he always, I don't know if he would always say it, but I caught a video of him saying that when he would come home, he'd be dead tired, kind of like you or me after a 9 to 5, but it didn't matter. If you're tired, you're tired, but there's going to be 4 humans climbing all over you and you got to play with them. So, I mean, it's something that you just gotta make time for.
Right. And he said whether win or lose, no matter, even if he lost and it was down, that he would still, they didn't understand that part, that it was just dad.
Yeah, and I completely agree.
Yeah.
Um, Brian, do you have your next question?
So it's kind of we can kind of see where it goes. I had an interesting comment actually from my son yesterday because I think everybody's got a superpower, and we were talking about it, and I think his is actually it's probably discipline. And when we were talking, because he's got a big event coming up, and I asked him how he does it because he's calling me out because I have not been as disciplined with working out, and um I've lost a little bit of strength and maybe picked up a little bit of tum tum, which is okay, because I like snacks. And for him, the way he looks at his day and his time is he'll ask himself, am I helping out future, Braden? Like, am I doing myself a favor? Am I choosing the right hard today? What's hard and I don't want to do today? So it can be easier for tomorrow me. Because, that's his best friend is tomorrow, him. Kind of like, what are your guys' thoughts on how are you prioritizing as you have stuff like, working out is hard to prioritize, but it's important so we don't die earlier than we need to. And then, we do have family time. How are you prioritizing things that are outside of that to help the future you? So, Marcel, you got a side hustle. We do this podcast, and then there's also the health and fitness part of it because, we all want to be healthy. So how are you guys, both of you, Van and Marcel, how do you try to prioritize some time for yourself and time for other important things that aren't necessarily fun, but help tomorrow you?
I mean, for me, I try to do things kind of when everybody else is asleep or not necessarily in the picture. So when it comes to like getting into the side gig of real estate, I'll get up a little bit earlier, or I'll stay up a little bit later, kind of when everybody's going to bed and stuff like that. But even then, like it's still hard. I still have to find time, to do it, to do those extra things like workout, which if you ask me, I don't have any time at all to do. there's there's no time in the day for me to work out. And so I'm at that point where I'm like, I have to find time, I have to make time, because you don't realize, you know that those things are important, but you're so like motivated and dedicated to building, for other people, that you kind of forget that you still need to build for yourself. And how long can you build for other people if you're not here to do it? So, making sure that you have that mindset that you need to continue to build yourself in order to build others is important. So it's definitely something that I have a desire to make a priority.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the physical fitness thing is probably the first thing that kind of gets lost in the shuffle, just because you miss one day and you really don't feel it. It's when you start missing like 30 days in a row, or
Month
2 weeks in a row,
two.
or maybe you get a run in and then it's 2 weeks later you get another run in, and it's like it's not much of a difference. So that gets lost in the shuffle for me as well. I would
Yeah.
say for me, I really like what your son's mentality is at. I think that's, I don't know if it's similar to mine, but I try to take care of just like the most urgent things uh as fast as possible. Like I think if I don't do a certain thing, like uh, really my main priority right now is just making sure my daughters are okay. She recently had a surgery and stuff like that. So if she needs an appointment, if she needs a follow-up, I make sure to take care of those things right away. So I just make sure, and it's not always a physical to-do list, but the list is there. It's just kind of, what does Cammy need in terms of appointments? That's kind of the top of the list. And then it comes to um, what can I kind of put to the side in terms of work? Like if I have to do that during a work time, what can I tell or put things to the side for a moment so I can go call a doctor, send a my chat message, something like that. So it's just kind of shuffling things around, but making sure that I make sure that I accomplish those things for my daughter, or other things that I need to do uh before other things. It's just making sure to prioritize everything.
Gotcha.
Yeah, definitely.
Prioritization. Yeah, I don't love that. I do it, but I don't love it. So
Yeah,
some of
it's
the
hard.
it is, and it's interesting because my kids are a little older than both yours. So, again, I'll kind of reiterate, like my boy's 13, my middle is 11. She thinks she's older than 11. And then my little is 8, and they're pulling me all kinds of different directions. And we recently had an incident that they were not part of, but exposed to, where another kid assaulted like two other kids assaulted another kid that that they're actually close to, and we've been having conversations about it. And I won't get into details, because I know some people that are involved kind of know like about this podcast, and I don't need to throw anybody under the bus. I'll do that in person, not publicly. um and one of the big things that some people are like, hey, like we don't talk about these things. And I'm always like, I think, and again, Marcel, you have seen some tragic things, I think is a nice way to put it, right? Due to your job. When do you think it's important to start having big conversations like with your kids about, it's safety? Just, I have big conversations all the time about like, hey, this is safety. Like we talk about, everything. Like, so, so he got exposed to this incident. We're talking about, hey, what would you have done? My son was like, oh, I'd have fought that kid, which is who he is. He's like super good at wrestling. Um, and now he's getting into boxing. All my kids are getting into boxing. Like even my middle daughter was like, oh, this is dumb, dad. And then she went and did, she's like, okay, you were wrong. It's really fun to punch things. And I was like, right. So like, how do you go about having big conversations, about safety, about, whatever it is you think that your kids need to know with your kids, and how do you choose when the time is right?
That's like a really hard question. Like
Yeah.
it's been because we're going through this now, and it's like it's really hard to determine when to talk to them about these things, these big issues, because you still want them to just be kids and not be paranoid, thinking there's a stranger that's gonna abduct them or something, like
Yeah.
my son is like the type we had, the stranger talk. I think we've probably around 5 or 6, the
Mhm.
five-ish, sixes when they start being able to go uh play around a little more loosely at the playground. You're always watching, but just to know, hey, if somebody, says something to you, or if a car comes up in your direction, not to get in the car, not to accept candy. Because right now, even now, my kids are still like, well, if the stranger has a puppy, do I go? you know, and you're like, no, no, don't run up to the car if they have a puppy. What about candy? No, no, do not do that. So,
What about a
just
Nintendo
having
Switch?
right, right. Like they're just like, hold on, when is it okay? Like it's no, like you come talk to mom and dad first. Um, but yeah, like just trying to find that balance is really hard. Um, we give them like the stranger talks a little earlier. We give them we're now giving them just being as a black male and female, an African American family. Unfortunately, there are still things that have to do with racism and different things like that, and having to give our children just that awareness, like kind of making them aware of it without kind of uh, having them fear it. We're kind of trying to get to that point now where you know they're hearing stuff in school, and so now we have to kind of teach them those things. And I think that's the balance we're trying to find, is when is it right to expose them to those elements versus waiting until it happens and reacting to when it happens. So I think that's kind of what we're getting into now, is just slowly exposing, not not to make them fear it or anything like that, and then just correcting situations kind of as they happen too.
Excellent. So I think for me, and again, my kids are the oldest in the bunch. I have them all the time, like, and sometimes I get nipped by um, other parents that I'm involved with, just because, like, and it's not just like the I call them creepers, it's because there's so many of them. Like, you never realize it, and like, as you know, my kids, like, they have their own cell phones now, and um, my middle wants to do affiliate marketing. So, like, I set her up all her own stuff to do affiliate. Like, yeah, like, what 11-year-old wants to do affiliate marketing? Mine.
Smart one.
Yeah. So I set her up to do all of it. So, like, now she has these social platforms, and it's like, they're all connected to my name, of course. And it's, hey, like, here's what we're doing. And if somebody talks to you, like, these are the things, or like at school, like, like, we'll maybe have you on for the dating one, because Van's got some really interesting ideas about dating, and like, I just don't think they should. So,
Oh Lord, I'm
because
not ready for
it's,
that.
yeah, so I'm not either. That's why the answer is no. But it's all these, things on, like, as you get exposed to things, like, we have these big talks, or if I'm very fortunate, like, my wife and I don't really fight often. Um, we did have disagreements, but just our personalities happen. You've met my wife. Um, go together really well. Like, I think when you choose a partner, it's incredibly important. If you escalate easily, they're not an escalator. If you never get escalated, then maybe they pull you up. So, like, her and I just happen to fit together really well. So they don't get exposed to that, but sometimes they'll get exposed to, like, grandparents that have an argument, or aunts and uncles, and having those big conversations about, you know, pretty much everything. I have them all the time, because I'd rather have them learn from other people's mistakes than run into these face first and really feel that pain of, this is what happened, or, pain that you can't fix as a parent, or as a dad, that you can't protect them from. Because, we'd all like to be the dad that can go save the day, but there's times that you can't. There's times that they're exposed to things that that you have no control over. And um, the internet itself is pretty vicious. And having a 13-year-old boy, um, he has a 13-year-old boy with 13-year-old boy, buddies. So making sure that they're have those big conversations about, hey, that's not for real. None of that's okay, kind of thing. That way they come to you um, for them. And I have found, and I'd be interested, and I know a little bit on Van, so I'm interested in yours. I know we got about 10 minutes, so it's kind of a big question for our last couple minutes. How do you utilize grandparents or other people to kind of bolster your teachings and like those big talks? So like for me, my middle both my daughters, I think it's a girl thing. Are just huge talk, like prolific talkers. They got to talk everything to death, which is great. Not the best for my patience level, so they call my mom. They call my mother when they run into something, and they will talk grandma's ear off, and then we can have a group discussion about what it is. So like, do you utilize grandparents and aunts and uncles and all that jazz as tools so they have an other outlet that's not just mom and dad?
I mean, for us, not really. I mean, they like right now, with me and my wife being in Tennessee, um, they've been spending the week with grandma, and they're honest children. If something happens, they'll mention stuff to them. Um, but they don't really. I think that we have a good enough relationship and an open enough relationship with our kids that they tend to come to us and feel comfortable coming to us with a lot of things. I mean, and right now I think that may be the age that that's kind of all they know is mom and dad are there for us, and we've had those conversations that you know you can talk to us and you can be honest with us, and we're not going to judge you about it, or you're not going to get in trouble for everything. Everything that happens, whether it's issue or not, like they're not always going to get in trouble for things, because we also have to leave that trust, in them
Mhm.
to be able to come to us during those tough situations. So I mean, they really don't go to their grandparents for advice or anything like that. But if they do have an issue, like they had an issue this week with um, the bus driver. I guess the bus driver might be speaking kind of inappropriate or more adultly to them as far as the language he uses on the bus and stuff, or what he says to the kids. Um, and they told their grandparents, their grandmother about it, and then the grandmother is more of a, you know, kind of give you that soft answer, and
Mhm.
then just, hey, let me pass this on to your parents type of thing. So that's kind of where we're at with it. Is they still come to us about everything, um, as right now. Hopefully that doesn't change when they get older and stuff, and we can continue to keep that trust and relationship. But right now, that's where it is.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I was gonna say for me, we don't really have those conversations yet. Uh, I think it's more because we're not sure if if they can understand yet. My oldest is 2.5. Really, it's been reactive. Uh, so when he runs into the street, that's the most that's the one on top of the list right now. So we it's really just making sure that he pays attention to where we're pointing, and making sure that it's at least getting into his head. So I think for us, it in terms of big conversations, I think for me it's a good conversation that we're all having right now, and I think more dads should have it, because you kind of have to make the list and make sure you hit the times that are necessary for it. Because I'm thinking about the biggest one, and then it's way down the line. It's just like the birds and the bee. No, not the birds and the bees, but like how do babies get made? Or I guess it's birds and the bees. But and then it's like dating and stuff like that. So that's like hopefully way down the line. But like you
That's
need to
far
pick
down
an
the line as
appropriate.
you think, man.
Oh, I mean, you need to pick an appropriate time to have it, and like you said, Marcel, you want them to still be kids. So we have a couple of minutes left. What I wanted to wrap with, and I just want to give you the floor, Marcelo. Again, we're a dad podcast, so um, we're 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 really liking the point of views you have. It really aligns with a lot of things that we say. So we just want to give you the floor, and give whatever message you want to give to dads out there that are struggling or not struggling. And what would your last kind of thoughts or message be to them?
Man, I think that as we touched on earlier, being there is just being there, spending time, no matter how hard you're working, um, make that time. Uh, Remember that being busy isn't always being productive. So always just try to make that time with your kids and your family productive. Keep it a conscious effort to do that. I think is a big deal. Um, it's funny, I went to a real estate conference, but I learned a lot about uh, just myself and different mind settings and different ways that I can be a better father and husband. And one of the last things that I learned as I was walking out the door at the end, I was talking to a, a, a real estate guy who he has his wife and his kids are learning real estate and stuff as well, and they're doing a great, amazing job at it. Um, and one of the things that he left me with was making sure to take interest in what your kids are doing. And when you take interest in your kids, they take interest in you. And I thought that was like powerful. And I'm getting a little emotional about it because as a kid, I never understood that from my dad. He was always busy. He was always working. He was always gone. And he had me do the things that interest him. I did martial arts. I was very good at martial arts, master in martial arts. Uh, and I spent a lot of time with my dad in that realm, in that world, a lot of time. And so really he was there, but it wasn't what I wanted to do, and so when I would play basketball and I would take interest in doing different things, he wasn't around for those things. And I took that as like, like he didn't care. And so just making sure that you take interest in what your kids are doing, no matter how terrible they might be at it, or my son, he plays basketball, my kids play sports, and there's my daughter's she's got my more athletic ability and stuff, but my son doesn't. He doesn't have that. He's terrible at stuff. He's terrible at basketball. But it's the first year that they're playing those things, and it can hurt to watch. But he has fun. They both have fun doing it, and whether they're a star at it or they're terrible at it, I'm always going to be there for every single event, every single game that I can make. And I make a conscious effort to just be there during that time. So take interest in what your kids are doing, and it'll be reciprocated. They'll take interest in you.